In the second part of our conversation with Tania Lindo, we discuss an article that she was interviewed for in 2020 for The Kit, titled A Black Mother on Being Petrified for Her Son. In this article, she reflects on the painful labor that Black mothers must undertake to prepare their children for the realities of racism in North America. Following what has been called a racial reckoning surrounding the lived realities of Black people in North America during 2020, and the backlash that has emerged against this movement ever since, we felt it was essential to discuss the unique challenges Black people face regarding safety in our communities, which is an important part of Tania's story. A big thank you to her for being willing to discuss this topic with us. I'm Alexis Hood.
And I'm Amy Plord.
And you're listening to Forks. As children do, they become major forks in the road right from the beginning.
Yes.
As you wrote about in 2020 in an article in The Kit. You talked very openly about the experience of raising a Black boy, and particularly when you were writing that in 2020, that moment where there was so much conversation going on about race and safety and, everything in the context of George Floyd and everything that was happening at that time. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the fork in the road when you became that mother at that time, what that was like for you, because that experience is not something that us as white mothers have ever even had to think about. I mean, Amy is a mother of a boy, and I suspect you've never had to think in those terms.
No, I can't imagine what it would mean to have those types of conversations about just when the police are around and how you have to behave, how you have to act. Because it's very different conversations I have with my kids about what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for the question and, to have the courageous conversation. In the Black community, we call it, the talk. And it's not the birds and the bees, or it's not exclusively the birds and the bees. I call it, the talk 2.0. Just to rewind a little bit, I remember the first time I was called the N-word. And I was 11. So I was 11 years old. I was lined up at the, waiting for the school bus to go home. And I remember his name, but I won't shout it out. But he butted in front of me and he said, "Get behind me, N-word." And I remember I didn't handle it very gracefully. I saw red, and it got physical. And it's probably the one thing that would enrage me to that point, especially to take on a boy at 11.
Good for you.
Yeah. Right? But I took him down. Anyway, fast forward to now, you become a mother. And I'm a mother of a son, a Black son. And there is that juncture where, years prior, I recognized that I'm really doing this alone. Like I was a single parent as well, for your audience, to get additional context. And I knew what happened at 11 accelerates now in another generation. So it could happen to him at 10, could happen to him at 9. And, they say the best defense is a good offense. And it was time to have some age-appropriate conversations about some things. And I felt like it was important for me to make my son aware that some things are going to happen in this life before they happen, so that he's not caught like a deer in headlights when he has to make some decisions whether to go left or right. And, at 9, I started to have conversations with him, knowing that, hey, you know what? One day someone's going to offer you a cigarette. And one day someone might even ask you to steal something at the store. Or one day, someone might even try to touch you in your private parts. But one day, someone's probably going to call you the N-word. And one day, police might even pull you over just because you fit the description. And here's what you need to do, because I need you to come home safe, right? Because, gosh, it's no secret in our community, we see more visuals of it in the U.S. news cycle than we do here. But it's not that, obviously, it doesn't exist. That there's racial profiling, and there's some systemic issues that have resulted in some unfair practices.
Mm-hmm.
So I just need to make sure that as he's moving from being a really cute kid to becoming a young, an adolescent, and now he's a man, that he handled himself in such a way that he wouldn't get shanked. Whereas I was able to take on a boy in the schoolyard back in my day, now it could be a very different story. It could be a knife, or it could be, some other weapon that, and boy on boy is probably a little different than how had that guy who called me the N-word. I don't know if he would have really got as physical with me as two fellas might be, right?
Or to your earlier point, a police officer.
That part.
Yeah.
Right. So by the time he was 10, it happened, where he was called the N-word in the schoolyard. And so my intuition was right. And thankfully, he handled it with his words and not with his fist. And therefore, he didn't perpetuate a violent black male kid stereotype that would get him expelled or suspended from school. The boy who called him he got suspended. And while it was a painful experience, these are the things that we have to arm our kids with. Fast forward to, I don't know if he was a teenager yet. If he was young, but I remember I don't think he was in high school yet when this situation occurred that I'll share with you, where he was taking dance classes, hip hop, jazz, and classes, and they'd had a recital, and because he did really well, I bought him this hat, this New York Yankees hat, and it was gingham. It was like baby pink and baby blue checkers, and he loved this hat. And my sister and I decided to go shopping to Buffalo with him, and he was wearing the hat. And so he's in the back seat, my sister's driving, I'm in the passenger side, and as we're pulling up to customs, the immigration anyway, I turn around and I say, take off the hat, right? And he's like, no, I don't want to take off the hat. Now, I know he needs to take off the hat. I know that he needs to take off the hat because I know that hat looks different to that officer on him than it will to him on another child who isn't Black. I know this. And my son, for your audience, his name is Malik. And this is also post 9/11, where there was also, while we're not Muslim, there was a lot of Islamophobia, and Malik is an Arabic name. And so I'm like, we're pulling up, take off the hat. And him being obstinate little know-it-all.
Typical teenager. Yep.
Wouldn't take off the hat. And we pull up, and my sister hands the 3 passports to the officer. And he looks at my sister and I. He looks in the back. He looks at our passports. And he opens up Malik's passport, and he says, "What are 2 nice girls like you doing with this hoodlum with the Muslim name?"
Just as you expected.
Just as I expected. And then I look back. Malik takes off the hat at this point. And I also know that these officers can, as much as I'd like to claw his eyes out,
Yeah.
I know they can make our day, right? If
There's a lot of power in that.
there's a lot of power in that
Yeah.
moment, right? There's a lot of intimidation in that moment. There's, so I can't clap back. Otherwise, he could pull us over
Yeah.
and just
You don't need your day
ruin
real.
or
Yeah.
the
Or who knows?
car
Yeah.
searched or whatever,
Yeah.
right? That could just escalate the situation. And it's a really gross feeling when you just have to shut up.
It's dehumanizing.
It's dehumanizing. And I remember talking to him afterwards, and he wears his name very proudly because Malik means king or ruler. And so that he was called by a stranger. And like I said, I don't know if he was 12 or 13, someone in authority, because he was wearing a pink and blue checkered baseball hat on his head, a hoodlum with the Muslim name. It was, I guess, his second, but probably the most profound lesson as a Black boy in racism, that he'll probably always remember. But he was really baptized by fire in it.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fast forward, he was a really great student, and he entered, like I mentioned earlier, the modeling game, and moved to New York. New York called, and he's had an incredible career, just again representing brands in ways that weren't typical for Black male representation. So proud of him there. I always say, your job is more than pretty pictures. You really are representing and making breakthroughs, and he just hit the industry at the right time. And plus he's a really good human. But fast forward to, like you said, 2020, and even before that, Malik has been to more marches than I ever have. And, having the conversations with him, I remember there was a George Floyd march he wanted to go to, and it was during the pandemic. And I'm like, hey, it's the pandemic, the virus, like you shouldn't go out there. Plus it's New York, and it was really hectic, and it was really scary. And the things we were like, I'm only sitting here from Toronto, watching it on the news, and just how much unrest there was because of what had happened. And my son says to me, Mom, I have to, like, this is about me, right? And I would rather, die from COVID than from a knee in my neck. And so with that, I had to concede and just say, okay, yeah. But now I'm having to have the conversation and let him go, and let him go with my blessing. Not that I could let him do anything. He was in New York, right? But just, encourage him. Now I'm having to have conversations I never imagined having to have, like, make sure you have a bottle of milk in your backpack in case they tear gas you. Make sure, where you're walking on the perimeter, so that, and stay away from the police, right? In case, anyone tramples, or, they come with squad car. Make sure you have a Sharpie and you write the name of your lawyer friend on your leg or on your arm in case they take your cell phone.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And make sure you march with a couple of your white friends.
One of the things that you wrote that really stuck with me was what you wrote about the mask. That in that march.
Yes.
Yeah.
make sure you wear one of the masks that look like a hospital mask, like a blue one. Like, don't wear a black one.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wear one that would make you look like a threat, like you are a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, make sure you wear one that
Is medical, is very clearly
medical.
medical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, because you just don't have the luxury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're, and what sucks is, it's like we were talking about earlier about other aspects of this conversation, is you want our kids to have freedom, and freedom to be, and freedom to be who they are, and to exercise rights and creativity, and to take a big bite out of the world, and to, of course, fight for social justice and whatnot. And then that moment happens where, as a parent, now you're tested, and now it could be truly life or death. And before George Floyd was Ahmaud Arbery, and I don't know if you remember the Ahmaud Arbery story, but, you know, he was jogging down the street, and Malik likes to jog. Malik loves to skateboard, and he would do so freely. And now in that case, it wasn't police, but they were vigilantes who thought they were authorities of their neighborhood. And, you know, we all know the rest of the story. But that, I saw my son's face in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And this really is the one sorority that no mother wants to be part of in the Black community. It's not that bad things don't happen to other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's that it could happen to you because you're Black, or because you're fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
That is egregious, and that is painful, because we can't hide that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't hide that. And so living in, you know, he now lives in a country where there's right to bear arms. You know, it's also just culturally different than here in Canada. And again, where I don't disparage all law enforcement, of course. There's unfortunately just some bad apples that have created fear for a subset of people. And there's a very unique experience for Black people in this respect that have made it petrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And I said in that article, I'm petrified
Mm-hmm.
a lot of days.
Yeah.
But I have to trust and hope and pray, and we communicate practically every single day. And one of the rules is, if mom calls, you call back. I admire his guts more than anything. And I admire that, you know, he stands on business. But and he's growing and learning and whatnot. But there's some, and now we're in another interesting election cycle in that country that is also brings so many of these topics back to the surface, and how the risk to marginalized groups,
Mm-hmm.
if they swing one way versus another,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to leadership, and how the following is responding or reacting to that,
Mm-hmm.
is
Just all that rhetoric that inflames
yes,
the hatred.
Correct.
And dials up the risk
correct,
and the violence.
correct.
It's a scary time. It's always a scary time.
Yeah, it always is.
I have to say, though, that your son's living up to his name.
Hey, he
Yeah.
will be.
Well said. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you,
Well
Thank
done,
you.
Mom.
Yeah.
thank you, thank you, and well done him. You know,
Yeah.
he's so humble, and he gives me so much credit for how he's turned out. But I say, you know what? A lot of parents, we try our best, and don't always get this outcome.
Mhm.
And so you have to have ears to listen, or you have to have a heart that wants to have a healthy relationship with me, and one that respects. I'm no longer parenting. I give guidance because I have lived experience, like what we were talking about earlier. That I've got lived experience that, and hopefully you don't have to endure some of the mistakes that I learned through the school of hard knocks. But you also he makes a choice how he chooses to wake up and decide. He used to play volleyball, and that's where I thought he'd be going off to school for. But there was this team that used to have this shirt, and on the back of the shirt it said, "Decide who you want to be, then do what you got to do." And I always remember that line. And yeah, every day he decides, and we all decide when we wake up in the morning who we want to be, and then decide what you're going to do about it. And he's made a decision. You two have made a decision.
Yeah.
I'm making decisions, and we're lifelong learners on this.
Thank you for talking about that.
Yeah.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you found inspiration here, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts and leaving us a 5-star review. It really helps us. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn.